Hello and welcome to Dead Cells. All right, so I learned something from a comment. I'll put that comment right here. You can earn boss cells from not just the Hand of the King. I did not know that. I thought you had to go. I thought all DLC bosses, if you fought them, you're just. Hold on. What's classic giant outfit? Right, we got that. Awesome. Which means I'm gonna go fight the giant. I thought you had to fight specifically the Hand of the King for a chance at a boss cell. I am quite happy to learn the different. That I was mistaken. Okay, I've got a nice starting weapon, so I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. I gotta remember that I have the ability to parry still. I just have to activate it and not just roll. So something that caught my attention, I was listening to this week's or a recent do I want the wolf trap? I think maybe not. I'll take the wolf trap. I was listening to this week's Castle Super Beast, and something got brought up that actually made me think about what I want from video games. And specifically, it was talking about... I want punishment on my shield. The release of, like, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth compared to Remake, and how it fell below sales expectations for Square Enix. And before, the guys had gotten an email that was talking about how video games now have to basically beat an investment on the S&P 500 for investors to see it as a success. Which, hey, if you're going to be investing into a video game company, that's probably one of the only metrics that you could really be using to see if you're going to make a good investment. Personally, I think investing in a video game company to make a video game for profit, it's not the worst, but I hate it all the same. And the reason I hate it is that we're now pushing video games where you're afraid of making a failure. Because, or bigger companies are afraid of making a game that is going to be a failure because they have to perform to investors, which, hey, that's how investing works. You don't get investors by making bad products. And I'm not even saying that Final Fantasy Rebirth is a bad product. That is the farthest thing from what I'm trying to say here. What I'm saying is that video game companies are... I feel like it's now being afraid of actually making a game that won't quote-unquote perform. Which, yeah, you always want all your games to perform. But I think everyone kind of agrees, especially with this current console generation being how it is, you kind of just want video game companies to make video games. How little video games have actually been coming out? It's really sad to me how few video games have come out this for the PS5. And it's not all to do with graphics, I know, but I would say a large part of it is to do with graphics. Everyone is pushing to make the higher and higher resolution games. I mean, that's why we're getting a PS5 Pro refresh. You know, I'm not saying we were never going to get a PS5 Pro refresh, but the push for how the industry believes to make, or how they believe a good video game, or quote-unquote good video game, will be made, is making the game look prettier. And that's a decent way to go about it, sure, but Concord is a shining example, I would say, of you can throw all the money on the planet at a game. And things like Rockstar should not be counted in this, I think, because they make games that, you know, they do throw all the money on the planet at them. But I think they're also the problem is you can make a game look the prettiest thing on the planet, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like Red Dead Redemption 2. End of the day, though, do gamers want that? Or do we want titles to come out more frequently? Fuck. And have a more breadth of a, have more ingenuity. This is also a bad example, but looking at Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I think that's a phenomenal game. I'm going to replace this. Tears of the Kingdom is a phenomenal game. Is it the prettiest game? No. It's technically not the prettiest game. And it doesn't have to be. Because they brought a style to it. And that style just so happens to be, you know, visually appealing, sure. But they're not trying to chase after, well, if we pump more money into it, it's going to perform better because it's going to look better. And I hate that metric. And it's sad that you see that line go up, but that, I think developers are seeing the upper limit of that line. And I'm kind of happy about that. I'm sad that video games are not being successful. I want video games to be successful. I don't wish for a Concord situation where it's terrible. But end of the day, we had to have something like this happen sooner or later, and I hope it's going to send the right signal to people that the 400 million, if that's a real number or not that's accurate, the 400 million that was wasted on Concord, and I will say wasted, I mean, the team is what the team is. They didn't make an enticing game. So they failed. And you have to take that failure on the chin. Sony's definitely going to be taking the failure on the chin. And it's unfortunate because you see, specifically with Sony, making these, what I would say are mistakes left and right. Because they're more focused on pushing graphics for games that people... I'd be honestly interested in seeing people that are going to say, no, I want those kind of releases. I want the releases that push graphics. If you want a release that push graphics, you're not going to be buying a console. You're going to be buying a high-end PC. And what we're seeing with high-end PCs as well, these games are not optimized at all. I mean, they're poorly optimized. They run less than stellar on the highest end PCs. You could be running a 14th gen Intel CPU with an RTX 4090, two of them, even though that doesn't do anything now. You could be throwing all of it at these games, and they're not going to run well, which makes you feel shitty. It's like, why did I spend $5,000 building this high-end PC? It's, what is that? Damned Vigor. Okay. And it's just a huge land of diminishing returns. And I think it's going to need another high-profile failure to really send this home to developers. To kind of loop back around. Son of a bitch! I didn't even have time. I was shocked. I was still recovering from the ground pound. Damn it! That was a good run. I think we're going to have to see another high-profile failure to hopefully send, again, the correct message that we want more game. I did not mean to take these. I'll take them, but I did not mean for this. We want more games more often that don't look as necessarily as technically amazing. The game, or rather, on the Castle Super Beast podcast, they talked about a very unfair statistic, and they compared the release time for Final Fantasy VII Remake, just Remake, not even well, kind of both. They put the time frame of Rebirth and Remake together, 9 years since it was announced. And they pushed it to what you had in older series with like Ratchet and Clank, but also with a modern series with the Yakuza series. There have been like 22 Yakuza games in the 9 years it's taken for, and I don't know if 22 is correct, but you've had at least a dozen Yakuza games come and go in the time that it took for Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth to release. And so we've had a amazing series come about in that time frame. And honestly, I think you could say that people are probably more pleased, and this is where I'm probably getting way off topic and, definitely putting words in people's mouths, but I would say that people are more pleased with what the Yakuza franchise has been doing in those 9 years than what the entire Final Fantasy franchise, not just Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, but what the entire Final Fantasy franchise has been doing in those 9 years. I would say that even releasing a couple bad ones along the way, the Yakuza series has become almost as popular, if not rivaling as popular as Final Fantasy. And again, people used to get a dozen games from a series easily within the lifespan of a console generation. They brought up Ratchet and Clank. It's been 5 years, it was 5 years, I believe they said, between Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and the last Ratchet and Clank game, the one on PS3. I don't think it was on PS3. Anyway, 5 years. Meanwhile, back on the PS2, we got like 8 games. And I would prefer, I prefer more games that don't look as stellar, that don't need $1 billion or, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars pumped into them to look slightly more spectacular. Spider-Man 2, case in point. How much better does Spider-Man 2 look? I mean, it costs like something crazy for Spider-Man 2. I think the devs came out and said, like, we are being paid by Sony to make this game look better. We're just told, make it look better. And they did, but it was marginally better. Meanwhile, I think that you could have put that money towards more games, which people would have been enjoying much more. And I really hope we get away from the diminishing returns that are games have to look better than the last one. Fuck. I would love for us to get more games. I'm tired of being, 5 years into the PlayStation 5 and I can't count them on one hand, but it feels like in my soul I can count the amount of PlayStation 5 games I actually own, or that have come out and released that I've been looking forward to. And it's kind of embarrassing. It's like, why did we even go into this console generation if not for games? Like, why else are you buying consoles? It's to get games. And if your manufacturers want to normalize, unfortunately normalize it taking 8 years for a game to come out because we need to put in ray tracing technology to make the shadow reflections look a little bit better on Windows that are just going to be turned off anyway when we switch it to performance mode. But oh, don't worry, you can buy a console refresh that is going to allow you to keep that mode on while we think it runs at 60. I saw something come out and where the new modes aren't even going to lock themselves to 60. There are some that will lock themselves to 60, but it's not a guarantee. And I think that is the stupidest thing that you could be doing with a pro version of a console. If those games aren't running at 60, I don't care if it's 8K. I don't care if it's 12K. I want my games, and it's been shown in the fucking presentation. Mark Cerny himself said, hey, we've heard you guys, but they haven't. We heard you. You're going to put on performance mode.